Hello and welcome back to our course on preparing a 2D character for Unity. So in the previous lesson, I talked about the future structure of this project once we get to Unity and kind of planned out where we were headed with that. So we have to create some animation clips in order to give them a bit of logic once we get to Unity's animator system. And that's going to allow us to integrate things like player inputs uh, and setting some rules for how we get from one animation to the next, such as how do we get from a walk to a run. Um, but we have to create those individual clips in isolation, I guess. And I'm going to, over the next few lessons, just show you how I'm going to go through creating one of them, and I will just supply the rest. It will take far too long to actually show the creating of each clip in the course. So I'm going to do the walk cycle here. And what I want to do in this lesson is to talk about how to get some reference material in so that you can follow some of that while you're working in Spriter. And first thing I want to do is actually just give a proper name to this character who's been called Entity Zero the whole time. So I'm going to double click up there and call her Sapper, same as all the rest of the sprites, and double click on that walk as well, or animation, and call it walk. So this is our character Sapper with one animation so far, walk, and it's got no frames in it. So I want to just bring in some reference first, right? So the reference I've put in a folder down here called Z reference, and the only reason that I have that letter Z in front is to ensure that alphabetically it pops to the bottom where I can find it. So otherwise it's going to get lost in between pelvis and rib cage. So in here I've got some individual PNG files, right? So the reference material comes in as sprites as well. And what we're not really doing with our animations here, the ones that we're taking to Unity, is doing frame by frame animations where we over time just swap one image for another within a framed rectangle, and that would be our sprite, you know. So it's possible to do that, and it's possible to do it here in Spriter. It's possible to do it in Unity, but I'm not going to really do that here. We may do a little later on. You know, you might do it like by swapping two different facial expressions on the head or something like that. You know, or something like, you know, the button press on our hand here. But for the most part, we're just doing transform animations by changing angles and positions of these bones. So the reference material, however, is going to be a swapped image frame by frame animation, and we find that here in our reference folder, right? So I'm going to take all these ones marked walk, and you can see that they're just sequences of images, right? So you can make these yourself, whatever you like. You could get them from your camera on your phone, as long as they are individual images. And we can click on that one there and hold down Shift, and I'm going to bring in these ones marked walk, and you can see that they're all named the same except for a numeric sequence at the end. And if I say right click here and say import selected images as a new object, it's that word object is the operative one there. You know, it's going to bring it in as one rectangular sprite, and over time it's just going to swap that sequence of images that I've just selected. But its start time is 0 milliseconds and its end time is 1,000 milliseconds, 1 second. I happen to know, because I created this reference myself, that this is 1,300 milliseconds. And of course, if you had created your own reference, your own videos to refer to, you would also know how long they were before you animated a thing. So you probably would want to set the time beforehand. So I know this is 1,300 milliseconds. So if I try and type in there, I can't right now. It's not going to let me do that here. I have to do it down on my timeline. So I can't. What this is saying is I can't make a sprite with a longer animation than the timeline I've got down here. So I can't stretch it out beyond my maximum time. So I'm going to close that for the moment. And my start and end times are down here. It always defaults to 1,000. So I'm going to make this 1,300. And that's just by clicking in the end time and just typing it in there, right? So you can see there's an option to stretch the keys out. So if you already had an animation and you wanted to adjust it, you could you could expand and compress the whole animation by having stretch keys turned on there. You would crop it or leave space at the end by turning that off. So I'm going to leave it off. But if you do have reference to work with, it's better to do this when you have no frames created at all. It's just easier and cleaner to do it that way. So I'm going to hit apply length. And if I hold down Control on my with my middle mouse, I can scroll in and out on my timeline there. You can see that my full length of my timeline is now up to 1300 frames. So, or not frames, milliseconds. So if I right click on my selected images and say import selected images as new object, it now presumes that I want to use the full time. I can do anything less than this, but I'm going to bring it in for the full duration of my timeline, and pull it in like this. Now I could. I'm having a little difficulty placing it because I'm quite zoomed far into my my character there, and I've only got as much room as my canvas allows to drop this character in, or to drop this new sprite in. And it's overlapping my character. You may want to have it at the top of your Z order, where it'll be by default, over your character a bit, or behind your character, or fade out its alpha. I actually prefer to leave it to the side rather than to trace over it. So I'm going to put it there, and it's a little bit of all of those things actually. It's a little bit overlapping my character. It's to the side, but not quite enough. And as you can see, it has created all of the frames that it needs down there. If I just press play, you can see what it's doing, right? So it's just going through the timeline, and it's playing frame by frame, right? So I've got this one rectangular sprite, and it's all it's doing is just changing the image that it loads in at a given time. So that's, much like traditional film. What I need to do though is just move it a little further to the side, where I can work with it. So I'm going to just move it over here like this, just slightly out of the way. I want to get this line here pretty much in line with my baseline over here, and now if I scrub through the timeline, you can see that it starts to move back to where the original import had placed each of those those objects in each of those frames. So you can see here under object properties that X and Y position are interpolating over time. Well, I like it here, right? So I want to keep it here, and if I right click on my object, I get this this menu pops up. Copy selected item property to all frames. So I want to copy the X property from this frame to all the other frames, and I want to copy the Y property to all the other frames as well. And now it doesn't move. So I'm going to use this as a reference for my my character. I'm also going to just press Control and left, and that just pops it in my Z order. It pops it to the bottom of my Z order. So I'm going to leave it there, and we'll begin animating in the next lesson. Okay, so see you in the next lesson.